When Lisa's grandmother Mary was brutally forced out of her home by fake HOA cops, the peaceful neighborhood was shaken to its core. At the center of it all was Carl Stevens, a ruthless HOA president using deception and intimidation to line his pockets. But Lisa's courage and a surprising call to an old Marine friend turned the tide in an unforgettable way. Just wait until you hear how justice finally came knocking and why this community refused to back down. It started like any other ordinary morning for Lisa Carter. Her grandmother Mary, a gentle 78-year-old woman, had called their quiet suburban neighborhood home for more than 10 years. Mary's days were usually peaceful, tending her garden, chatting with neighbors, and enjoying the calm routine of her life. But that calm was shattered in a way no one could have expected. Two men appeared at Mary's front door, dressed in what looked like official police uniforms. They claimed to be officers from the HOA, Homeowners Association, tasked with enforcing neighborhood rules. Their message was harsh and sudden. Mary had allegedly committed violations, and she needed to leave her home immediately. Mary, bewildered and frightened, tried to explain, to understand what she had done wrong. But the men showed no kindness or patience. Without warning, they forced her into a wheelchair and pushed her out the door. Then, as if she was no more than a discarded object, they left her there, on the curb, alone, confused, and vulnerable. Meanwhile, Lisa was just a few blocks away, working at her job when her phone rang. The frantic voice on the other end told her everything. The shock hit her like a thunderbolt. How could anyone treat her sweet, loving grandmother this way? As the details unfolded, Lisa's confusion turned to horror. Those so-called HOA cops weren't real officers at all. They were imposters, exploiting the neighborhood's rules and trust to intimidate and remove residents like Mary. Their goal was clear: force elderly homeowners out to increase fees and profits for themselves. Lisa's heart pounded with disbelief and growing fury. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a deliberate act of cruelty, wrapped in the false authority of fake badges and empty threats. And Lisa knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't let this injustice stand. The moment Lisa heard what had happened to her grandmother, she sprang into action without hesitation. She immediately called the real police, hoping for swift help and justice. But instead of support, she was met with a surprising response. The officers told her the HOA held authority in the neighborhood and that their actions were supposedly legal. Lisa's trust wavered. How could an association have that kind of power? Why had the real police seemed so unwilling to intervene? Skepticism turned quickly into frustration and then anger. Determined not to let her grandmother's mistreatment go unanswered, Lisa began digging deeper into the HOA's workings. What she uncovered was shocking: a tangled web of corruption connected directly to the HOA president, Carl Stevens. Carl was a man known around town, but not for good reasons. He had built a reputation on shady business deals and ruthless tactics to get what he wanted. Lisa found evidence that Carl and his closest allies had been using fake badges and intimidation tactics to scare elderly homeowners like Mary out of their homes. Their goal was clear: push families aside, raise fees, and line their own pockets, all at the expense of innocent neighbors. With every new fact Lisa uncovered, her hatred grew fiercer. This was no longer just a personal fight for her grandmother's rights. It was a battle for every family victimized by this corrupt HOA mafia. But facing such powerful enemies alone was daunting. Lisa realized she couldn't do it without allies, people who cared as much as she did about justice and protecting their community. The moment Lisa saw her grandmother left alone, exposed on the curb overnight, vulnerable and forgotten, something inside her snapped. The pain and helplessness turned into fierce determination. That very night, she reached out to someone she knew she could count on: Mike Reynolds, an old high school friend and a decorated Marine now leading a battalion nearby. Mike was known for his unwavering loyalty to his community and his protective spirit. Without hesitation, he promised Lisa he would help. Within minutes, Mike and his Marine battalion rolled into the neighborhood, a strong and commanding presence that no one could ignore. Their arrival sent a clear and powerful message: This community's elders would not be pushed around or abandoned. The fake HOA cops, caught off guard by the sudden show of strength, were confronted openly, exposed for their lies and intimidation, and forced to back off. The real police, now visibly embarrassed by their earlier hesitation, quickly stepped in. Faced with undeniable evidence and the Marines' presence, they launched an immediate investigation into the HOA's corruption. For the first time, hope flickered that justice would finally prevail. In the weeks that followed, the truth could no longer be hidden. Carl Stevens and his fake enforcers were arrested, facing serious charges of fraud, intimidation, and elder abuse. The shadow that had loomed over the neighborhood began to lift. Mary was gently brought back home, safe, cared for, and embraced by a neighborhood that had rallied to protect one of its own. Her house, once threatened by cruelty, was now a symbol of resilience and community strength. Lisa stood by her grandmother's side, tears welling in her eyes. The heavy burden of anger and fear that had weighed on her heart transformed into deep relief and pride. Justice wasn't just served, it was felt in every smile, every handshake, every kind word shared among neighbors. The fake HOA cops had tried to tear them down, to silence their voices. But with courage, unity, and a bit of muscle from the Marines, they stood their ground and won. This home and this neighborhood would forever remain a place where justice wasn't just a word on paper, but a living promise fiercely protected by those who called it home.